Welcome to the Deep Dive. This week we are digging into a major administrative event that really sets the financial clock for one of the most important new drugs in women's health.
That's right. We're talking about fezolinetant, which Astellas Pharma markets as VEOZAH.
And our mission today is to unpack the hard numbers from the FDA and the USPTO. But, the real story here is this fascinating tension between long-term, absolutely ironclad market exclusivity and, some pretty immediate and crippling commercial risk.
The tension is exactly it. The news we're covering, this formal determination of the regulatory review period, it's the anchor that locks in potential revenue well into the 2030s.
A huge win for Astellas then, long-term predictability.
A massive win.
Yeah.
But you have to see it through the lens of these recent post-market safety concerns, which are, actively slowing down the drug's adoption right now. We're really tracing the full lifespan of this product, from the science all the way to its final exclusivity date.
Okay, let's unpack that. So the core event is this official FDA announcement. They've determined the applicable regulatory review period for VEOZAH.
Right, the RRP. And this is the non-negotiable metric used to calculate how much patent term extension, or PTE, the drug will get.
And the numbers are big.
They're huge. The FDA confirmed a total RRP of 2,573 days.
Wow.
That's the span of time. Nearly 7 full years that Astellas lost on their patent clock because the drug was just tied up in mandatory regulatory scrutiny.
7 years. Let's pause on that number. 2,573 days. Why is that so high? What does that imply about the complexity of these trials?
It implies a significant investment and a huge regulatory burden. Breaking it down, 2,248 of those days were spent in the testing phase.
So clinical trials, safety studies, all of that.
All of that for over 6 years. The remaining 325 days were in the approval phase, so from the day the new drug application was submitted to the final FDA sign-off.
And it's crucial to note here, for this whole extension process to even start, the FDA had to explicitly confirm this was the first permitted commercial marketing of this product.
That's the trigger. That confirmation starts the whole patent term extension engine under the Hatch-Waxman Act.
And it sounds like Astellas was ready.
Oh, absolutely. They immediately submitted PTE applications for 3 specific patents, trying to claw back as much of that lost time as they legally could. The extensions they're seeking range from 616 up to 1,141.
Over 3 years for that top one.
Exactly.
Okay.
And that just shows you how much monetary value they see in securing that final market window.
Okay, so that frames the commercial side of it perfectly. But to really get why that exclusivity is so valuable, we need to understand the innovation itself.
Absolutely. So VEOZAH is for treating moderate to severe vasomotor symptoms, what most people just call hot flashes and night sweats from menopause.
Right. And before VEOZAH, the options were limited. You had hormone replacement therapy, which works, but has some well-documented risks.
Right? Risks like blood clots, certain cancers, or you had less effective non-hormonal options like SSRIs, which often have their own issues.
But VEOZAH is totally different.
It's a first-in-class non-hormonal treatment. It actually targets the underlying neurobiological cause of the problem. That's the innovation. It's not just masking symptoms. It's addressing the dysregulation happening deep inside the brain.
So let's go deeper on that. The mechanism. What's actually causing these VMS symptoms at a brain level?
Okay, so think of a tiny, very sensitive thermostat in your hypothalamus. It's controlled by something called KNDD neurons.
Okay.
Before menopause, estrogen keeps a specific signaling molecule, neurokinin B, or NKB, in check. Everything's balanced. But when estrogen declines, that NKB signaling it ramps up unchecked.
And it throws the whole thermostat out of whack.
Completely out of whack. And that results in those sudden, intense hot flashes.
And fezolinetant is so elegant because it just steps in and blocks that signal.
Precisely. It's an NK3 receptor antagonist. It physically blocks NKB from binding to its receptors, which in turn normalizes the activity of those KNDI neurons.
It just resets the thermostat.
It resets the thermostat. And the clinical data was incredible. We're talking a 50 to 95% reduction in VMS. That's relief on par with hormonal therapy, but without the hormonal risks. A huge milestone.
So we have this revolutionary drug, huge efficacy numbers, and now the final RRP determination is in, locking in that long-term protection. Let's look at the full exclusivity stack. How long is Astellas protected?
It's very robust. First, VEOZAH has new chemical entity exclusivity, NCE. That's a 5-year shield that protects the active ingredient itself until May 12, 2028.
And the patent term extension, the PTE, that just layers right on top of that.
Exactly. So based on the patents they filed for, which expire in March 2034, we are now looking at an anticipated generic launch date of March 28, 2034.
10 years of guaranteed exclusivity from today for a potential blockbuster.
You got it. This RRP determination is the final administrative piece that solidifies that incredibly long runway.
That is the kind of security investors dream of, a guaranteed revenue horizon deep into the next decade. But we have to address the elephant in the room. Despite this incredible long-term protection, the market reacted pretty negatively just a few months ago when the FDA dropped a new warning on the label.
And this is that crucial tension we talked about, the market reality colliding with the IP security. The FDA added a serious warning about the risk of hepatotoxicity.
Serious liver injury.
Right. And this wasn't based on the big clinical trials. This came from post-marketing surveillance.
From a single post-marketing case, as I understand it. One case of acute liver injury within 40 days of starting treatment. Why would a single case trigger such a severe response?
Because it's a first-in-class drug.
Yeah.
A novel mechanism targeting neuroreceptors. When you have a new drug like this, especially one for chronic use, any signal of organ toxicity, especially the liver, is met with an immediate and, well, a highly stringent response from regulators.
And that response demands mandatory lab testing.
Rigorous, mandatory hepatic lab testing, both before and during treatment.
And this monitoring regimen it's extensive. It creates real friction for every single prescription. So doctors now have to check key liver enzymes, ALT, AST, and so on, before a patient can even start the drug.
And that's just the beginning. The patient then needs mandatory monthly testing for the first 3 months.
Monthly.
Monthly. And then again at month 6 and month 9. Just think about the burden that places on a doctor's office, not to mention the patient.
That totally changes the commercial picture. Suddenly, this revolutionary drug requires 4 or 5 mandatory blood draws in the first 9 months.
And if those liver enzyme levels go above 5 times the normal limit, the drug has to be stopped immediately. This is the source of that commercial drag.
Yeah.
You have a drug with up to 95% efficacy hitting a wall of administrative complexity and risk perception.
So what we have is a superior product, a phenomenal mechanism, secured by an action that promises revenue until 2034. But the immediate growth it's undeniably dampened by this liver monitoring protocol.
It's a giant headwind for near-term revenue.
Which creates a really interesting arbitrage opportunity. We have to ask if the market is overcorrecting for this short-term pain, given the extreme value of that 2034 patent runway.
I think that's the central question.
Okay, this is not financial advice. But since we've synthesized all this data, let's pitch an outrageous but plausible trade idea based on this analysis.
Let's do it. So the thesis is what we're calling the regulatory overhang arbitrage. The market is likely pricing in a major headwind for Astellas right now.
Right, because of this complex mandatory liver testing, which is depressing current revenue projections.
Exactly. But that patent term extension confirms a runway to 2034, and we think that guarantee is being undervalued by the market today.
So the trade go long Astellas call options, let's say expiring in 2027 or 2028, we're betting that the market will eventually look past the complexity of the monitoring.
Which could, over a few years, just become a normal clinical routine.
And refocus on the sheer value of a decade of guaranteed exclusivity that kicks in after 2028.
And now for the outrageous part, the hedge. We finance those long calls with a short position in a major diagnostic or lab testing company that specializes in little panels.
Okay, that's aggressive.
It is. We're betting against the sustained necessity of continuous high-volume liver panels for all VEOZAH patients long-term.
So you're essentially betting that either the medical community finds the risk is so rare that adherence to these protocols gets lax over time.
Or, conversely, that doctors switch so aggressively to other drugs that the projected volume of these mandatory tests never actually materializes.
So either way, you're shorting the sustained operational complexity that the FDA's mandate created.
It's a bet on the enduring value anchored by that 2034 patent date, funded by skepticism about the long-term, high-volume need for all this lab testing.
That's a fantastic way to frame it. So to summarize, VEOZAH is a major scientific breakthrough offering revolutionary non-hormonal treatment, and the FDA has now confirmed the data needed to lock in its IP protection, potentially through March 2034.
But the immediate commercial outlook is messy. The growth is undeniably complicated by that September 2024 safety mandate requiring all this costly hepatic monitoring. Short-term friction versus long-term certainty. That's the dynamic to watch.
And remember, this deep dive is strictly for informational and educational purposes. Always consult a qualified professional before making any investment or medical decisions.
And before we go, here's a final thought to chew on. Does the FDA's swift and stringent response here signal a new, heightened level of risk assessment for all novel first-in-class drugs? If the bar for post-marketing safety signals is this high now, how will other pharma companies adjust their own planning to mitigate against these kinds of mid-cycle safety shocks in the future? Something to think about.